Hi, my name is Lindy Feld, and I am Vice President of the Periodic Paralysis Association. Today, I would like to tell you a little bit about my story with periodic paralysis and how I came to find my diagnosis of hypokalemic periodic paralysis. I am genetically diagnosed. I have just recently found out my genetic diagnosis through Dr. Frank Lehmann-Horn in Germany. But this has been quite a journey for me, and for our family it has spanned probably about 100 years of time. I brought some notes with me today because 100 years is a lot of time to try to remember all in your head. So I hope that you'll bear with me if I glance down once in a while. I first found out that I had something wrong with my muscles when I was born because I was born as a floppy baby. I didn't have any reflexes when I was born, so the doctors knew immediately that I had some sort of a muscle condition, but they weren't sure what it was. This was probably not too smart on their part because I had a father who also had periodic paralysis and was having a great deal of difficulty getting around already at that time. My mother had also lost a baby at birth about a year before I was born, but at that time no one knew why this baby had died. I had a fairly normal young childhood. I walked when I was 10 months old. They thought that I really had outgrown these problems that I had at birth. But then when I was about 2 or 3 years old, I started to have a phenomena where